Welcome to 6 Minutes with Jason Fulmore, who's SE Russell. I'm here today with Michaela Childs and Coach Scott Miller, who's the head coach at Daphne High School. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Doing great.
Awesome. So before we get into it, Daphne is in Lower Alabama, right? Tell me a little bit about Daphne, Alabama. I don't really know a whole lot about it.
Scott's been here longer than me, so.
I have. I moved down here in 2004, so I've been here a while. Moved down here from Michigan. Really, it's been a great place for my wife and I to live. You know, as we spoke a few minutes ago, we just had a baby about 5 weeks ago. So if you hear him in the background, that's who it is.
Very nice.
It's been a great place for us. The community, the closeness to the beach, Mobile Bay, everything around the area has just been great.
Very cool. So, Michaela, you are leaving the beach and the closeness of Mobile Bay and heading to Oklahoma City.
Yes.
Why Oklahoma City?
Actually, Scott kind of hooked me up with an offer over there to wrestle. He ran into the coach over there for their women's team, Nicole Tyson. They kind of got talking, and next thing I know, I'm getting a text from Scott saying, hey, this coach is going to contact you, and it just went from there. Scholarship offer, trying to recruit me, and I'm just super excited to join a team that's really wants to be there, you know what I mean? Because it's hard sometimes with female wrestlers to really see the spectrum of success, and people have been there for a while,
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're not only making a transition from Lower Alabama to Oklahoma, you're also making a transition from wrestling folk style and mostly boys, I would assume, to now wrestling freestyle. Are you a little nervous about that, or is that pretty much in your wheelhouse? No big deal.
I started out doing freestyle, but I was in 8th grade, and then I did 2 club seasons when I was over in California, but it's not what I'm used to, and it's definitely not the type that I'm best at, but I'm definitely open to learning more and trying to expand my knowledge in freestyle just because I started so basic.
Yeah, very cool. So, Coach, we have worked a lot in Alabama to sanction girls wrestling and came up just a little short this past year.
Right.
But, so I coached many, many years ago, and I know that I got a question of girls wrestle, and kind of a quizzical look. Is that look still given to you when people talk about wrestling and girls wrestling?
It is, most certainly, and especially when you tell them that, in Alabama, we still wrestle with the boys. I get that look everywhere we go. I don't know why. I mean, it still happens.
Yeah. Is it something that you coach for a long time? Is it something it's changing, or is it still?
With Daphne being a newer program in the South and wrestling being newer in South Alabama, as you just stated earlier, we tried to get it sanctioned, this season fell a little bit short. I think that it's coming around, but as we've seen, it's going to take a little bit longer in this area just because the sport is newer to this area.
Okay. Michaela, so you talked a little bit about wrestling in California before moving. So what was it that kind of piqued your interest as far as wrestling goes? Why wrestling?
So my brother started out wrestling before I had, since folk style is the season before freestyle. And the middle school started out doing freestyle before they switched over to collegiate. But my brother and my mom are just you need to try this out. You'll love it. It'll really help you, because I stopped doing sports once I hit middle school because I was all gangly and awkward. And so they convinced me to do it, and I really just fell in love and stuck out that first season. And I really struggled in the beginning, And even through that first year, I was not successful at all, but I just found so much enjoyment in it that it was worth it.
Was it hard to get you to like for them to convince you, or were you kind of secretly ready to go?
I think I was somewhat ready anyway, just because me and Jared used to like mess around and like he'd teach me moves in the living room. And so it started out with that, and they were like, just seeing me learn it and enjoy it, they were like, I really think you should just try it. And so I was like, okay, I'll stick out one season.
Very cool. So what do you have an early memory from wrestling and going, this is really hard. Is this really for me? Or because you said your first year was kind of a bit of a challenge.
So where I lived, we had local tournaments within the county every single weekend for freestyle, and it would let people of all ages go ahead and do it. And they'd crab pool or like round robin, 4 people per bracket, just based on whose weight is close to whoever's. So honestly, if it's whoever's closest to you, you could get a kid that's like 20 pounds heavier than you. But I got a bunch of kids in my weight little bracket that were like 10 years of experience, had 10 years on me, and I was only like 13, so I was definitely shocked, and I definitely got beaten so badly. But it's that moment when you get off the mat and they're just so nice to you and they just tell you to keep going because they see that you're a starter and they're willing to just welcome you anyway and teach you what they can.
That's cool. That's awesome. So going back to you, Coach, we talked a little bit about trying to sanction here in the state of Alabama. Came up just a little bit short. I know you and Coach Welton and several coaches across the state are pretty, you have girls on your team. I think you guys had 3 last year at Daphne. So there's a push. From a coach's perspective, what needs to happen to kind of try to get more coaches on board to try to encourage girls to come out for the team and continue wrestling?
What needs to happen? I really think that in order for more girls to come out, we definitely need to have the girls wrestling needs to be sanctioned. That's got to happen. I know next season we're planning on having a couple girls tournaments. So, that's a good step in the right direction. However, we've got to have girls teams. We've got to have girls tournaments. We've got to have girls state tournaments. There's got to be girls wrestling. There's got to be a huge push for that.
Is there a stress on coaches that you don't have a large enough coaching staff that the girls would pretty much have to go to the guys tournament and have to run a girls tournament side by side with the guys tournament? Or would you be able to take the girls to a different tournament and location? Do you have a staff that would be able to do that?
Yeah, that's one of the concerns is having enough coaches. We actually definitely got moved to 7A this year. So, if we have a girls team, we would like to have, you got to have a varsity coach and an assistant, a JV coach and assistant, a girls.
He's gone. There he is. Okay. Yeah. So finish up what your thought, Coach.
All right. Where did we leave off?
So you were basically saying that, you moved to 7A. You would have to have several different coaches, and the coaches, that might be a bit of a stress taking them to different locations and things like that.
Right. Exactly. So, having an additional coach or two for the girls program with, a coach that's willing to work with the girls will, that's just one more thing that we need to have.
Yeah.
Got to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So Michaela, you're walking around Daphne High School and your classmates are going, "You wrestle?" What kind of questions do you get from your classmates? Are they surprised? I mean, at this point in time, you're a senior, right? They know that you wrestle, that you've been there, but go back in time.
Well, actually, this is my second high school. So when I first came and told them that I was going to Daphne High specifically for wrestling because my dad got stationed in Mobile, we would be living over Baker area. Otherwise, but I tell them that I go to the school specifically for wrestling, and they're like, "You wrestle? This doesn't make sense." Because like having a little person like me, like it's hard for them to picture that. Mainly just because of the lack of education on the topic of girls wrestling. People don't recognize that it's not just me going out against some like 150 bulky dude. It's people my size, maybe a little bit more strength than me, but otherwise like it's completely reasonable, and it's hard for them to understand.
You've got a classmate that's considering wrestling. What are you telling them? How are you encouraging them to come out for wrestling? Whether it's a boy or a girl, and would it be any different if it were a boy or a girl? Michaela?
um Mainly just highlight that like failing doesn't mean that the sport isn't worth it, because honestly I have failed so many times, numerous times, and I've had situations where I was going to fail no matter what, because I went through a bad experience at sectionals where I was at in California. I got knocked out of a tournament illegally. Just stuff is thrown at you from all angles, but it's that drive that you have to keep going forward in it, and just realize that the enjoyment in the sport is really what keeps you going. It shouldn't be about wins and losses. I had a coach before. My first coach told me it's not about wins and losses, it's wins and learns. And the sport just makes you learn so much about not only it, but life, really.
Cool. Coach, how about you?
So we're all wrestlers, and we can probably all agree with the fact that there's no other sport like wrestling. You know, team wise, individual wise, the things you learn and what you take out of wrestling will, you know, guide you through really the entire your life. I mean, I still use things that I learned in wrestling, you know, today, every day, the day before. But just that work ethic that you'll develop will be, you know, just something that you have with you for forever.
Yeah, very cool. What about maybe a parent who is a little uncertain about their son or daughter wrestling, especially maybe their daughter?
I actually had a parent ask me a few years ago when Daphne's program was new if we would be using any chairs to hit each other with. So obviously, you know, you get this misconception from the television, and, you know, like Michaela mentioned earlier about just not knowing, you know, about wrestling, but you know, the self-esteem that wrestling will give, you know, either your son or daughter is, you know, on a different level than any other sport, I think.
How about you, Michaela?
I definitely would just show the character that it builds, because honestly, like, bumps and bruises happen. It's going to happen in real life, it's going to happen in sports, and wrestling is one of the grittiest sports ever. But if you know what you're doing, there shouldn't be as much of a risk. And if you know that you're going to go out there and fight your hardest, like, nobody should get hurt, because the hurting happens when there's hesitation. And as long as your kid is fully like into it, there shouldn't be a risk. And you should want them to go out and do what they want to do within a realm that they can have success.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to have a conversation. We're going to continue in Alabama, Michaela, to sanction girls wrestling. And we want to wish you the best of luck as you head to Oklahoma City and wrestle out there. Is it the Oklahoma City Stars? Is that their?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah. So best of luck in competing next year in Oklahoma City.